Hello, my name is Rickard, and in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to recreate this Kinds of Kindness poster in Photoshop. I recently saw this series of posters for Kinds of Kindness, a new film with Emma Stone. I thought it'd be fun to recreate this poster in Photoshop and show you how to do that. Now, if you want to follow along, I have included all the assets that you'll need in a link in the description of this video. Go ahead, download those, and then let's dive into Photoshop. All right, the first thing I'm going to do is go to New File here, and let's call this Movie Poster. I'm going to change this to pixels, and I want this to be 1334 pixels wide by 2000 pixels tall. I want the resolution to be 72, and color profile should be working RGB, and this should be square pixels. Let's hit create. Next thing I'm going to do is set up some guides. So let's go to View, Guides, New Guide Layout. And here I want the columns to be 2 with no gutter. And this will just give me a center line. And then for the rows, I want there to be 4. Let's go ahead and get rid of the gutter there. And then for the margin, I'm going to use a 36 by 32 by 130 by 32. So just like that, and then hit OK. All right, next let's go ahead and go to File, Place Embedded, and within the Assets folder, you're going to see this Christopher Campbell file from Unsplash. I'm going to go ahead and place that. This is our starting image here. I'm going to do Command T for transform, and I'm going to make this bigger to about there, I think. And let's maybe make it a little bit taller so her face is about in the middle there. So something like this, and then we'll hit this check mark. All right, next we're going to cut out her face so that we can make it bigger. So let's go ahead and turn off our guides. I'm going to do that with Command semicolon. And for this, I want to use the pen tool. So I'm going to go onto the pen tool. Let's make sure this is on path, not shape. And I'm going to just start kind of from her chin line. Click, drag, click, drag. We're going to do that all around her face. And the better we make this selection, the less we're going to have to clean it up afterwards. So go ahead and take your time and make a nice selection here. And anytime you're doing a selection of something organic like this, you want to make sure that you have some nice curves. So don't use this as a glorified lasso tool by just clicking, clicking, and clicking. You want to do the click and drag each time. Now this eye here, we're going to replace with a copy of this eye just because it's lost in shadow here. So I'm going to kind of go to maybe about here and then just go up to where the eyebrow is. So something like this. And then we'll go all the way up to about there and then kind of go across and then back down the side of the face here. Something like this. And the great thing about the path tool is we can clean up the path afterwards. So I'm going to go onto my white selection tool there, grab this one, kind of move it up, grab this one, move it to the right. I want this to be like a clean line here. I don't want it to have these weird bumps. So we'll do something like this. And that looks better. And then along the top here, I also want this to be a little bit cleaner. And also have a little bit more of a pronounced edge right here. So something like this. And maybe less of a pronounced edge here. Could probably even get rid of this anchor point right there. And I think that looks good. All right, so now we're going to do right mouse click, make selection. I want to add a 0.2 pixel feather here, hit OK, and then do Command J, and we'll call this layer face. Command J takes your selection and makes a new copy from it, or a new layer from it. All right, so now with just this layer, what I want to do is remove the hairs on her face. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually just load the selection of the transparency by holding down Command and clicking here. And you're going to see why I did that in a minute here. All right, next we're going to go on to our remove tool. Up here, I don't want to have sample all layers, and I do want to have remove after each stroke. And what we're going to do is just paint out these hairs. So I'm going to paint where the hair is, try to leave as much of the skin that's not being removed out of my selection so that it has as much information to work with as possible in terms of what I wanted to replace that area with. So something like this, maybe make the brush even smaller. All right, and now one thing I noticed with this remove tool is that it leaves you with these very unfeathered edges here. So that's why I made the selection at the beginning. What I can do now is just invert my selection with this little button right here, or going up to select inverse and then hitting delete, and that'll just clean up those edges again. All right, and then the other thing we need to do here is just take a copy of this eye and move it to over here. So to do that, I'm going to zoom in a little bit here, go into my lasso tool, and just make a selection kind of this eye here. So to about there, we'll grab maybe a couple of these eyelashes and then something like this. And I'm going to do Command J again. We can call this eye. I'm going to zoom out and then put it underneath the face layer and then move it to the right till it's about in the right place. So probably somewhere around there. And then on my face layer, I'm going to add a mask, go on to my brush tool, make sure I have a small brush, put this flow, and then just delete where this eye is. So something like that. And that might be sticking out just a little too much. So let me take that eye, push it back in just a little. I do want this little highlight. I feel that that helps make it look like she has a second eye there. So somewhere around there I think looks pretty good. And let's go ahead and collapse both of these on top of each other with Command E. And then I'm going to add a mask again, and just with a soft black brush kind of paint anywhere where I see kind of a little bit of darkness on the edges. I want to make sure that we don't have any of that, so that this looks very nicely cut out. So here, just get rid of that kind of darker edge there. Something like that. Okay, so that gives us a nice face. Let's turn on our background layer again. And now what we're going to do is transform this with Command T and make it bigger. And we're going to do about 140%, I think. And then we're going to move this to the right just a little bit. So probably something like this. And then we're going to add a layer between these two, and we'll call this shadow. Go on a big black brush again. And here I can change the flow down to about 20. The shortcut for that is Shift. When you're on a brush tool, Shift and then 2 will change your brush to flow 20. I'm going to make my brush bigger and then just paint a shadow kind of here. Like so, and then take the opacity on that down until I see it, just kind of see this edge. So around 34%, and then maybe I'll make a smaller shadow, an edge shadow. And this one I'm going to make quite a bit smaller and just along that edge there. So something like this. And that looks good. The other thing we want to do here is add some film grain to this, because there's quite a lot of film grain in that original movie poster. So I'm going to go above all my art layers here and add a neutral gray layer. There's a few ways to do this. If you actually go to new layer here, and put this on one of these overlay blend modes. In this case, I want to use vivid light. You can turn this on, fill with vivid light neutral color, and we can call this film grain. But before I put this on vivid light, I want to convert it to a smart object and then put the smart object on vivid light. And then I'm going to go to filter, camera raw filter, and this is how I'm going to add my film grain. This just gives me more control than a noise layer, but essentially it's doing the same thing. So here I'm going to add grain, and if we put this to about 200, you can see a little better. Here, the roughness is what you can control here, with which you cannot do with a grain layer. So I want to take the roughness down quite a bit. And let's see here. So I think that looks quite nice. So 68, 64, 16. Let's hit OK. And you can see that that adds film grain to our image. Now this is too strong. And this is one where you want to control the fill, not the opacity. So we'll take this down to about maybe 30%, and that gives us a nice film grain. All right, and then the other thing I also want to do is just adjust the color of this a bit. So I'm going to add a curve layer, and I'm going to go to my blue, kind of bring up the blue so our blacks have a little bit of blue in them, and then bring down this so that our whites have a little bit of yellow, so something like this. Okay, and now we're ready to do our top lettering here. So let's go ahead and turn our guides back on with Command semicolon. I'm going to do a square here, just a selection to my first guide. And then we can change our foreground color to blue. We're going to use 02789D. Hit OK, and then go down here to our color adjustment layers and do a solid color. And not totally sure why it didn't. It usually uses our foreground color. I don't know why it didn't. Maybe I didn't commit it. So let's do it again. 02789, oops, 89D. Let's hit OK. All right, next we're going to add the movie credits, and I kind of cheated a little. I already kind of made a layer of this, so we can go to File, Place Embedded, and just grab this movie credits PNG from your tutorial assets. Go ahead and place those, and then line them up to this top and left guide here, like so. And then these need to have a yellow color to them, so we're going to do that with a layer style color overlay here, and just change this color to F9B904. Let's hit OK. All right, and then we're going to add our red text here. So let's go to our text tool. If we just start typing anywhere, we can type in kinds of kindness, and I'm going to do Command A to select all that text. You can also double click on the layer, and let's go up to our text color here and change this to D10A10. Hit OK. Um, and then we're also going to change the font here. Now, this is not the exact font used on the movie poster, but this is a very similar font that you can get from Adobe Fonts, and that's Adriana Extended Bold. We're going to change this to 71 point. And here I want to make sure my tracking is set to 20. And that is very close to the original font. We're going to left align this to the guide and then put it kind of about there. All right, the other thing I want to do here is I want this edge of the kinds of kindness to have just a tiny bit of blur, like maybe 1.5 pixels of blur. Now I could do this by converting this to a smart object and then going here and adding a bit of Gaussian blur. That's one way of doing it, but that would mean I would have to go in here anytime I wanted to change this text. And also if I wanted to make the text longer, that creates problems and so forth. So I'm going to do Command Z, undo that so this is still typable text. I'm going to show you another way to do this with a layer style. So here what we're going to do is go to our layer styles and add a stroke. And our stroke is going to be 4 pixels. I want this on the center. And here we're going to use a gradient. And our gradient is going to go from our red color, which is D10A10. And it's going to go to our red color, D10A10. But it's going to have 0 opacity here and 100 opacity there. And then here we're going to put this on shape burst. And now let's reset that alignment and let's go ahead and go into this and let's see how this looks. Okay, so I need to change this to outside. There you go. All right, now if you look at our text, it basically has a blur on it, and we can control the blur here. So how big we want it, or if we want this, the middle of the gradient to go out a little bit more, we have quite a lot of control of that blur. And the beauty of this is it's fully typable. So this is another way to add a blur to that edge of those letters. One caveat here is it does make the letters a tiny bit thicker, but because this font is a tiny less thick than the one in the original movie poster, I'm okay with that. All right, then the last thing we're going to do here is add a paper texture on top of the whole thing. So let's do File, Place Embedded, and I'm going to grab this paper texture that I got from texturelabs.org, a great website and resource for graphic design for adding textures to your images. So let's go ahead and place that. I'm going to do Command T for transform, rotate this, and make this the size of my document. Okay, so I want to add this texture to my image. Now, if I put this on multiply, it makes my whole image darker, and I don't want that. If I put it on overlay, it makes my whole image lighter, and I don't want that. So what to do here? Let's put this back on normal, and I'm going to show you a trick when it comes to using any kind of overlay of texture. I'm going to turn off my guides here. What I want to do is Command M, or Image Adjustments Curves, to bring up my curves. And what we want is we want this histogram right here to be in the center. So in order to do that, we can take this line and move the line on both these edges so that the center crosses right at the center of our histogram. So right about there. And then we're going to hit OK. And I also want to get rid of any color in here. So I'm going to go Image Adjustments, Black and White. And now if I put this on overlay or vivid light and turn it on or off, you can see it's not really affecting our color. It's just making this strong texture. Now this is way too strong, but we can go to our fill and just take this down to probably around 40%. And now we're adding that texture, but we're not making the image any lighter or darker. So there you have it. We've now created the poster. Now that we have it all set up, let's go ahead and turn it into a template, and then we'll use that template to make a second one of these. So first, I'm going to take everything that's happening above my image, put that, select all with just holding Shift, and then do Command G, and we'll call this Top Elements. And then everything that's happening below, we'll put in another folder and call this Artwork. And I'm going to go ahead and turn off of this artwork, and we can actually call this Top Elements Blue. And the reason I'm calling it blue is for the next poster, we're going to invert these two colors. So let's go ahead and select our background, do File, Place Embedded, and in our assets, there's this other folder, Brook. Let's go ahead and place that. And I'm going to do Command T for transform, make this bigger to about there. And I'm going to go ahead and turn off these top elements. And the first thing we want to do here is, before I even cut her out, I actually want to get rid of this top hair so that we have a clean face. Because if you look at the original posters, none of them have hair in the mask portion of the face. So let's go ahead and make a copy of this layer. I'm going to go onto my lasso tool and just select this hair. And I'm going to try to leave as much of her face not selected there. So something like this. And then under the generative fill command, I'm just going to say remove hair. So this one seems to have done the best job, but it still left quite a bit of her hair. So let's do a second one, see if we can get even more of this hair removed. Okay, this one seems to be our best bet. Let's go ahead and select all these 3 layers here and Command E to collapse those. I'm going to go onto my pen tool, kind of go from about here, and then start making a selection around her face here. And then we can go on to the A tool, meaning the direct selection tool, and just make some small tweaks here. All right, we'll do right mouse click, make selection, hit OK, Command J, call this layer face. And I kept the original because I actually do want her hair kind of going down behind it. Create a better mask illusion there. Now do Command T for transform. Let's make this 140 again. And then move it to the right a bit, like this. Maybe a little smaller, actually, around 135. All right, and then I'm going to make a layer here between the two, call this one Shadow. And I'm going to go onto my brush tool. I want my flow to be about 20. I'm going to select the existing shadow color here. Probably even grab the shadow color on her face. And then just paint kind of behind where this mask is. So something like this. And then take the opacity on that down a little to about there. And then for this, I also want the film grain. So I can just go to my artwork here, hold down Option so that it copies my layer, and then drag that down here. Go ahead and close this, put it right at the top there. So now I'm getting that film grain. And I also want my color adjustment. So let's add a curve here. And I'm going to go to my blue again, kind of bring up the bottom of the blue, not too much, probably around 41 there. Add a little bit of yellow. And on this one, I think I'm also going to just push the green up a tiny bit. Oops, green. Just give it a little bit of that kind of 70s-ish vibe. And then the other thing I noticed on some of the brighter images is that below the face, they have slightly darker. So if we add a second curve and just bring down the white point, so something like this. Now that I've done that, I think my green is a little too heavy. So just, there you go. All right, and then for our top elements on this one, what I want to do is invert the colors of the blue and the yellow here. So I'm going to hold down Option and drag this entire folder set down below like this. Turn off this one, and we're going to call this one Top Elements Yellow. And in this one, we'll double click on our blue color here and change this to our yellow, D10, A10. Why didn't that work? Oh, sorry, that's our red color. F9, B9, O4. There you go. And then for our movie credits, let's go into our color overlay here and change this to 02789D. And here the red does seem a little bit too much. So what we can do is just go to our stroke and maybe change that to 3. There you go. And let's do Command 0. And there you have it. We now have 2 posters, plus we have a template. So you can do far more of these if you want to. So there you have it. That's how you recreate that poster in Photoshop. And hopefully through this, you learned some tips and techniques that you can use in your own artwork and projects. Now, if you want to learn more about Photoshop and how to use it to create composites, movie posters, book covers, and all sorts of other artwork, check out Nucly.com. I sell professional training for Photoshop, as well as professional assets, presets, and tools that you can use inside of Photoshop. So check that out, Nucly.com. Otherwise, if you enjoyed this tutorial, please subscribe to my channel, turn on notifications, leave me a comment, share this video, do all that good stuff. And here are some other tutorials you can check out. I will see you next time.